there's just like proliferation and fluctuation and all these animals breed with each other, and it's like...
It's kind of that, but it's also that we haven't agreed, right? So there's this group of academic scientists who are trying to grasp so tightly to this very precise definition of a species as having to do with DNA, how much DNA matches something else. But that is, and it's interesting. I think the reason that we keep having this conversation is because it's genuinely interesting to talk about species concepts.
Sure.
We have come up with, dozens of different species concepts, and they're all for a particular purpose. If I am wanting to have a conversation about dinosaur fossils or anything that's a fossil, I'm going to use the morphological species concept because that's all I've got. I'm going to compare the shape of this bone with the shape of this bone, and if they're similar enough to my trained eye, I'm going to call that a species. I saw you had a bison priscus,
yes.
I'm going to say, skull out there. That's from
That's
Alaska.
from the boneyard, yeah.
Yeah.
Steppe bison.
Yeah, steppe bison, bison priscus, or bison crassicornis, bison occidentalis, bison alaskensis, bison... I could go on forever. The naming of bison was like sport in the 18th, 19th centuries, mostly 19th century.
Did you go to the bone lab, the boneyard?
I haven't. Don't think
Ben
I've
went.
been to his. I didn't go with Ben, but I've been working up in that part of the world for 30 years. We spend a lot of time working at gold mines outside of Dawson City. Have you been to Dawson City?
No.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's an old-timey gold town, dirt roads, wooden sidewalks. Like the buildings are all crooked because the fire is burned at one end and it melts the permafrost underneath, and it goes.
Whoa.
It's where I learned what you're supposed to do when a fight breaks out in the bar that you've gone into.
What are you supposed to do?
Grab your beer. Back up. Right?
No, get out of
Otherwise,
there.
your beer's going to get knocked over. I'm not leaving.
You're not leaving when a fight breaks out?
Not in Dawson City. There's mosquitoes outside. No, it's...
I would tell you to leave.
No, it's a weird place.
Unless
still have
they're
these...
women. Women fighting don't scare me as much as men fighting. But then women can pull out guns.
That's true. But it's Canada, so less likely for that to happen than in Alaska. But there have been weird things happen there. And, there's... You go out to the bars in Dawson City. Why am I telling these stories? This is ridiculous. You go to the bars in Dawson City, and they still have this thing where there's the bell. And if you ring the bell, the person who's rung the bell is buying a round for everybody who's in the bar. And you learn after you've been there for a while that a person is only ringing that bell because he wants the right to talk to everybody who's in there because he wants to fight with somebody, right? This is somebody who's like a diamond driller who's just got paid in cash for the first time, and he's like, now I want to fuck somebody up, right? So he comes in.
That's what they want to do when they get paid?
Rings the bell, and then goes from table to table sitting around with people, and the like nerdy scientists, paleogeneticists sitting in the corner are trying to just be super nice Canadians, like talking to these people like, I don't want to fight.
And he's just looking to fight with someone?
Just looking to fight.
Boy.
Yeah. It's a weird part of the world. It's a fun place to work. But anyway, I digress. There's gold mines like that, like the site outside Fairbanks, that are super productive like this. And every one of the miners out there has like this cool collection. Not any nearly as cool as his, but because he's got so much land, they've been collecting it for such a long time. When I heard those great stories about how he donated material to the American Museum.
Well, it was previous owners of his property.
Right.
Right? That's the case, right? And they dumped it in the East River. And so they denied dumping it in the East River. So then they hired these guys to go and dive for it. Right. And John Reeves told everybody where it was. Yeah. I don't know if he hired them or just told them. But so these guys dove into the East River. They found steppe bison, bones, jaw fragments, all sorts of different...
Do you know what I think is great about that story? I really like it, right? Because I'm sure it's true because they have so much of that material at the American Museum. When I started working on bison, and I've worked on bison for 30 years, right? When I started working on bison, getting back to the species concept, I was trying to figure out if the DNA mapped to these species names, and they've got a fantastic collection at the AMNH, but a lot of it is crap. There's so much bone there, broken pieces or other pieces, and you get to the point where you're like, what the hell am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
Now, they shouldn't have dumped it in the river. Obviously, that's dumb. But he is going to get the last laugh. He won't know because he'll be long dead. But in 10,000 years, when the paleontologists of the future are looking in that river, they're going to be like, what the fuck?
Right, because there's like tons of it out there, apparently.
Like, what happened here?
They found, what is that guy's name? Dirty Water Don? Is that his name? this one guy who's one of the divers, he's found multiple pieces.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure it's there.
yeah.
And they probably didn't mean anything terrible by it. They were
Well,
just
who knows?
like,
Those people aren't even around anymore.
Yeah,
I think
right.
this was in the 20s, wasn't it?
probably around the 50s. That was when
Is that what it
most
was?
of the collection came from. There was a ton of gold mining activity in the 50s and 60s around Fairbanks.
So
Yeah.
what they have found on John's property that's so spectacular is that it's really only a few acres that he's getting all this stuff from.
Yeah.
Which makes you question, like, how did all these animals die off
Yeah.
in mass in this very small area
Yeah.
where you've got warehouses filled with bones and tusks and
Yeah. Near Dawson, it's called the Klondike region, you have this really fine glacial silt, and that settles in different places in different quantities, and it settles really quickly. So you get this really fast, thick buildup of this really fine silt that preserves the bones really well. So when we go, the gold miners they're placer mining, so they're taking these high-pressure water hoses and
Yeah.
washing away this frozen dirt, then they let it thaw for a bit, and then they wash away the next layer. They're trying to get to the gold-bearing gravel that's underneath. But while they're doing that, literally thousands, tens of thousands of bones come out of there. And in some places, it's more rich, more intense than others, but it's there. I've taken students up there, and they're all mopey because of the mosquitoes, and they're mopey because they're 19, and they're like, oh, we're never going to find anything. They jump out of the trucks, and they're like, holy shit, is that a mammoth tooth? Like, yeah, that's a mammoth tooth. Yeah.
yeah. Is that what you brought?
That's what I brought you. Yeah, it's a fossil. This is from South Carolina. But,
Wow. That's
Yeah.
from South Carolina?
and it's a fossil. You can see it's fossil.
I know they make knife handles out of this stuff, which seems to me it's kind of gross.
Yeah, that has.
Oh, that's your logo
It
on
has.
it.
Of course, it's branded. And it's colossal. Yeah, it's our logo.
Wow.
But yeah, mammoths. Do you know the story about our founding fathers and mammoths?
No.
Yeah. So Thomas Jefferson was obsessed with mammoths. Yeah.
How did he even know about them?
So it was probably mastodons, because it was these teeth that were melting out of the salt licks and things like that in the other part of the United States. But he was obsessed with them. He was getting his friends to mail him teeth that he was finding, and he was. This is a funny story. Let me see if I can get it right. You should look this up too, because it's hilarious. How mammoths made America great before, and now when we bring our mammoth back, we're going to do it again. So there was a guy in France who was writing a series of books. He was like Comte du Buffon, I think was his name. I'm terrible with French, so I probably did it wrong. But he was writing a series of books about natural history. And the fifth, I think, of his books was called The Theory of American Degeneracy. And when it was essentially about how all American animals were more shit than animals from everywhere else in the world. And it was during the War of Independence, and so it was really popular to hate on American stuff, right?
Really?
And so he couldn't have pissed off Thomas Jefferson more if he'd tried. He didn't know anything about Thomas Jefferson. He was busy fighting with Linnaeus, and Linnaeus was busy classifying things, and this guy was like, there's no more than 200 species of animals anywhere, so why would you bother with that sort of academic silliness rather than think about, like, how the animals got this way in the first place? In his mind, like, discovering why American animals were so shit was the right way to be spending your time as a natural historian. But this pissed Teddy Roosevelt off, and so he was trying to figure out how he could prove to this guy that American animals were actually bigger. So he was getting his friends to compile lists of things about, like, how American bears are bigger than European bears. American wolves are bigger than European wolves. That it isn't that, you come to America, like this guy said, and you suddenly get weaker and your blood gets watery. That was what
That's
he
what
had
they
written.
thought?
Yeah, that's what and it was a bestseller, apparently.
That's incredible. So they thought, like, living under oppression was really good for you? It's like strength training.
They were probably imagining, I guess when people came over, there were new diseases. They probably did get sick.
Yeah, for sure.
And so there was probably something in it. But so Jefferson went so far as he had a moose sent to this guy's house on his doorstep, but it was like partly rotten when he'd gotten there, and somebody put the wrong, antlers on its head. It was just like really dumb. But his main feature was mammoths, that he knew that this animal, he didn't think they were extinct at the time, and nobody really knew about the idea of extinction. He was convinced that Lewis and Clark were going to find them, that people were going to find these mammoths still there, and
Isn't that
was
incredible?
going to prove.
Isn't that incredible when you just think that just a few hundred years ago, that was the pinnacle of science? That was like the peak of understanding of all the species that were still alive. We really didn't know.
What I don't understand about this is how a person who is a scientist can look at how everything has changed in a couple hundred years or in 20 years when it comes to genetics and still say, oh, we know everything. Like, I'm right. Like,
I think it's what you were saying earlier. It's a famine mentality.
yeah.
It's just weak people's minds.
Yeah.
There's weak human beings out there. They're the way they think is a very weak way of thinking, and they want all the attention for themselves, and they're very egotistical, and it's also very supported by academia. There's a lot of bitchy infighting in academia. Yeah. It's really gross. Late 18th century, the idea of extinction was only just beginning to be popularized by some thinkers.
Georges Cuvier.
Cuvier.
Yeah.
Jefferson wasn't among the believers. In a pre-Darwinian age, extinction was a violation of religious ideals. God would not let animals go extinct. And secular ideas, the balance of nature could never be so significantly upset. So for Jefferson in particular, extinction was just an unusual theory. It's fine. The bones exist, he wrote. Therefore, the animal has existed. The movements of nature are in a never-ending circle. Well, that's the real question. Like, there have been animals that went extinct and then came back, right?
The dire wolf.
Right, but that was because of you guys. Wasn't there like a bird that they thought was extinct?
That's
and then
not.
returned?
Then they didn't go extinct, right?
But right, like sort of like the Tasmanian tiger.
They just
right?
became or Bigfoot. Oh no, the Tasmanian tiger was definitely real.
But some with the thylacine. But Bigfoot was real. It was Gigantopithecus. They think that was real.
But Gigantopithecus is really old.
Right.
But would have changed until today. I mean, I told you I have tested. People send me all kind of crazy things. The insulation was one of my favorites. This is something that I got while I was still doing my PhD. People would send us all sorts of crazy things. They sent you
insulation? They said it's Bigfoot fur?
Yeah, it was from a guy somewhere. No. They didn't say it was fur. No, it was better than that. It was, yeah. He was from somewhere in the Carolinas, I can't remember where, and he'd sent a letter, and it was a handwritten letter on his personal stationery, which had a naked girl dancing around a pole, which gave him obviously more credibility.
That's his stationery. Yeah. He's emailing you from his strip club.
Yeah, it was a written letter.
A letter from his strip club. Sorry. Everything's an email to me now.
It's a while ago. And he sent a couple of cuttings of insulation from his basement telling me that the family of Bigfoots that lived in his basement, he had seen urinating on this insulation. And so if I was going to get Bigfoot DNA, it was going to be from that insulation.
Oh, boy. Did you test it?
Of course I did.
You really did?
What?
I would have tested him for meth. I don't know. I said, I'll test something. Let me find out what you're doing, dude. Your Bigfoot pees in your basement.
I didn't get any Gigantopithecus DNA. There was some human DNA on it.
So what was the year that Gigantopithecus, we believe, went extinct? Like, so the bones were found in an apothecary shop in China in the early 20th century, right?
I don't actually know. I think Gigantopithecus is millions of years old.
I think the story is that an anthropologist was in an apothecary shop in China and found the bones. I think it was in the early 20th century. And I think he said, where'd you get this? Like, he's got giant primate teeth. And they took him to the place and they found jaw bones that indicated it was bipedal. And then they started like digging and discovering. I don't think they have a full skeleton.
Oh, it's so cool.
Right?
Well, most things from paleoanthropology are, I'm going to rewrite human history because I found a partial jawbone with 3 worn teeth.
Here's the problem, right? You could tell me whether this is correct. Most things will never be fossils.
Right.
Right. So we don't even know how many species existed and never left a fossil.
Right.
Because fossils are hard to make.
Right.
So we're essentially getting the tiniest little bits of information, and we're trying to piece together this understanding of millions and millions and millions of years of creatures on this earth. And to do so arrogantly seems so crazy.
Right.
To be arrogant about something that has, just by the nature of its existence, how do you find it? It's a very limited resource.
Right. This is one of the super fun things about ancient DNA, right? So I think, I don't know, remember who it was who said this, but we don't have any idea if your bone, you paleoanthropologist, if your bone has descendants, but I know that my DNA has ancestors. So I can learn a ton by sequencing the DNA from the people that are around. And if I am lucky enough to get it from these bones that I know is real about human history, and paleoanthropologists and archaeologists in the beginning of ancient DNA hated it because it was going in and going, oh no, turns out you were wrong about that. Yeah. Oh, Neanderthals and humans didn't didn't interbreed. Oh, turns out you were wrong about that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I remember
there
them
were only...
teaching us that in high school.
Based
Yeah.
on what data, though?
I know, but that's the thing is they taught it so arrogantly. Did people breed with Neanderthal? Nope, that was impossible. They would say it so arrogantly.
And-
This is just high school teachers.
And now we know that they did. And
Yeah.
we've been able to learn so many cool things about humans from studying this Neanderthal genome.
Right.
I mean, I know people get hung up on DNA and how you need lots of DNA to define a species, but we have been able now to look. I think one of the coolest things that we've learned from the Neanderthal genome is that we all know that we have somewhere between 2 and 5% Neanderthal DNA in our genomes. We kind of get that now. You can get your DNA tested at one of these DNA testing places, and they'll even tell you how much Neanderthal you are, so you can have a competition with your brother and your cousins, right? I'm more Neanderthal than you. I'm amazing. Have you seen my forehead? Less well known, though, is that we all have a different 2 to 5% Neanderthal DNA. And if you were to go around the world and collect all of the Neanderthal DNA sequences that are in people alive today, we could put together like 93% of the Neanderthal genome.
Wow.
That's cool, right? So
That's crazy.
2 questions then. Are they actually extinct? If we can put together 93% of their genome by pulling together people who are alive today? That's just a fun philosophical question. Second is, what the hell is going on in that other 7%, right? And if we want to know what it is that makes us human, that's where we look, right? That's where we ask, what are the mutations that arose since we split from Neanderthals that if a baby got that part of the Neanderthal DNA, it didn't survive. It couldn't make it as a human. That is the bit that is important to define us. We've actually been able to narrow that down. There's less than 100 genes, we think, less than 100 mutations in genes now that have evolved since that split that most people that are alive today have. And that is what makes us human.
I think I'm still fixated on what you said earlier because I think it's so important that we decided what these animals were. We gave them these very specific names.
Right.
And that genes in nature don't care what we're saying.
Right.
There's this weird thing that's happening from the time we were proto-hominids to what we are today.
It makes sense, though. We want to have a conversation.
Right.
And if we want to talk about something, we have to call it something.
Right. Australopithecus.
Right. So we
Right.
have species concepts that we designed that allow us to have a conversation and know what we're talking about. So
Right.
when I talk about, and I call this fossil a name, you and I know that we're having this same conversation. If I am in charge of delineating species because I'm trying to figure out which agency is going to care for this endangered species, I might use geography to figure out what one species is and what another species is. The species concept that we learn when we take our introductory biology course is a species concept that was developed in the middle part of the 20th century called the biological species concept, which says you're a species if you can breed and if your offspring are fertile, right? But we know that lots of things violate that. Brown bears and polar bears, we just talked about how they're hybrids. Humans and Neanderthals violate that. Cattle and bison violate that to a way less of an extent than we thought that they did. This is actually a cool story that I do you know what a beefalo is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the female cow and the male bison or vice versa?
No, a beefalo is a breed of hybrid that is 5/8 cattle and 3/8 bison that supposedly has better meat.
Oh,
and
do
it's
they do
better
it on
milk.
purpose?
Yes, it was one of
Okay.
these breeds that they tried to make.
But does it work both ways? Does it work with a male bison and a female cow or a male bull and a female bison? Does
Turns
it work
out
both
it
ways?
barely works at all.
Oh. Do they do it artificially or do they have them party together?
No, they just lied.
Oh,
Yes.
it's fake?
It's not real.
Oh my goodness.
So I've spent a lot of time being interested in this. this sort of admixture history. And so I was interested in brown bears and polar bears and humans and Neanderthals. And what is it that suddenly makes a species not able to breed with another species? What is it that causes that sort of last wall to go up?
Right.
And then
Humans
suddenly
and monkeys.
you're the biological species. Yeah.
Right.
What exactly is it? Can we figure it out? And so I wanted to look at these different species pairs. And we knew about beefalo because people have, beefalo ranches there's a beefalo of the week. You should look that up because this is going to be like there's beefalo of the week competition where you see these animals. Anyway, so people in the early 20th century decided that they wanted to make hybrid cattle and bison because they wanted animals that were as robust in the North American prairies as bison, but as tame and easy to deal with as cattle. So they started breeding them together. And we're just like, this isn't working. This is really hard. When we get the F1s, that's first generation hybrids, often it's only the females and they're not reproductive. There's problems here. We can't do this. And because and so then people kept trying to do it because they really wanted to do this. And then there was this guy called, I can't remember the name of the person who actually did it, who claimed that he had been able to create this animal that was 3/8 bison and 5/8 cattle. And he sold his animal to a guy called Bud Basolo in California, who created this herd of 5,000 beefalo. And it was announced with great fanfare, like front pages of newspapers. He sold one animal to a farmer in Canada for $2.5 million, $1975. It's still the most expensive single animal that has ever been sold, right? $2.5 million, $1975 for this animal. And so we have this thing. I was like, we're going to sample them. We're working with collaborators from the USDA. We were reaching out to people, reaching out to ranches and saying, can we have some of your stuff? And they were like, nah, not sure about research on this. And so we started buying tongues. Because if you buy steak, you just get the same animal over and over again, but they all have one tongue. So you can just buy tongues and then you get lots of different animals. We sequence their genomes. And then we got from the USDA their expired sperm straws that they have for the animals that they give away to start your beefalo thing. We sequenced their genomes as well, including this $2.5 million 1975 individual. And we've done a lot of work on bison and cattle throughout the last, 30 years of my life. And so we have this big plot that shows bison on one side and cattle on the other. And we had made a hybrid so we could sequence their genomes. He wasn't born. It was an aborted animal because, it's very hard to make a hybrid. He fell right in between them, in the middle, where you would expect him to be. So now we know exactly where we think our beefalo should be. They're 5/8 cattle, 3/8 bison. They should fall out closer to cattle, but still up here. And so you plot them and they're all just cattle.
100%.
They're just cattle.
It was fake. So did they use like Highland cattle or something like that have those crazy furs?
There's some evidence that they used zebu. So that's a different type of cattle. It's the one that came from Asia. They have them in Brazil because they have a hump, so it makes it look a little bit more like bison.
Oh,
but if you look at it, if you look at the pictures of the beefalo of the week, you look at them and you're like, those are cattle.
Let me see a beefalo, Jamie.
When I did the beefalo of the week, I went down a weird path, so I just
boy, wrong websites.
No, it didn't seem like I was on the same path.
When was this all discovered that these are just cattle?
Oh, just look up beefalo, and then to look at historic beefalo, you can see the pictures of historical beefalo. Yeah, when was it discovered
that these are just cattle?
We just published the paper like a few months ago.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So this poor dude from 1975 that spent $2 million.
And he sold it back to Basolo for some of the money getting back. I mean, I think there was a thing going on there.
So these people are out here still selling beefalo like it's real. Like this is a website.
And they're hybrid with something. They're mixed with a little bit of zebu. Some of them have a little bit of bison in them, but this is
they're just cows.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I talked to Steve Vernella about this. I know that he's a friend of his. He was like, "That's hilarious."
It is hilarious. It's very funny. It does look different than a regular cow, though.
A little bit. I mean, they were trying to do that, right? And we can engineer everything. It doesn't.
But that's not what they did.
A Chihuahua looks different from a Great Dane, but their DNA is a lot the same.
So in 1975, how much of an understanding of this stuff did we have? Did these people think that they were doing this, or was it just a scam?
I think this is me speculating at this point.
Yes.
I think he had to know, right?
Yeah.
And at one point, there was a blood test that they had done where they were looking for markers in the blood. And there were 5 different markers, and they tested about 150 different animals. And they published a paper saying, oh, look, we tested all these animals. None of them have all of the markers. One of them has one of the markers, and we just think the test is bad.
Oh,
No, just,
boy.
yeah, fun. Anyway, I digress. I don't remember what we were talking about.
Well, we're just talking about a bunch of different animals that used to exist. You know, we were talking about Gigantopithecus at one point in time. You said it's really old. Was it 100,000 years ago? They
I think it's
speculate the age of them?
Older.
Older?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
So,
2 million to approximately 300 to 200,000 years ago.
okay. So, as recently as 200,000 years ago. So, you're like kind of, Homo sapiens are like 300, 400,000 years?
Diverged from Neanderthals.
Is that like around that time?
Yeah.
So it is possible that at one point, and so this is just a very limited amount of bones, right?
It's just limited, just like everything else in paleoanthropology.
So it's possible that they existed later than that. We just haven't found those samples yet.
Maybe.
But it's just
Hey, there was a
speculation.
really cool, this is just about how we don't know anything. We can actually get DNA directly from sediments. And this has been a relatively recent revelation. It's super cool because it means that you can take a plug of dirt from the inside of a lake and you can reconstruct the whole ecosystem as it changes over
What?
time. Super cool, right?
Wow.
But recently there was a paper that was published by some colleagues of mine that had done this for sites in Canada. And they found mammoth DNA and horse DNA in Canada, in these really well-preserved parts of the world where we've been working, that date to probably around 4,000, 5,000 years ago.
Horse DNA.
Yes. In
That's
North,
weird, right? Because they're supposed to be extinct in North America when? 10,000?
around the last, but there are a lot of Native American cultures who believe that they have a long history of the horse and that the horse has survived, and it's just dismissed because we don't have evidence for it.
Right.
But until we find DNA directly in dirt, I mean, this is just showing us how much we don't know, how
Right.
much we have to be really willing to. Obviously, we have a model of the way the world works, and we don't just throw away the model with new data, but we have to incorporate the new data.
Right,
and
you
see
can't be
how it
arrogant about the
impacts.
model. So the model is, if you correct me if I'm wrong, that horses evolved in North America, but it went to other continents, but then eventually died off in North America.
But survived elsewhere. Yeah. Eohippus, the very first horses, are from 50 million years ago. They're found in Wyoming, in the fossil deposits in Wyoming. Those are the little house cat-sized horses.
House cat-sized horses.
Yeah, but this is early horses, around the same time as we have the first primates and the first of the other things that we know.
That's so fascinating.
It's so cool.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about this the other day. The big debate that happened with Clovis first, that they used to think that human beings, they came over here at a very specific time, and then they found those footprints in White Sands, New Mexico, and they're like, okay, we got to rethink this, and we're being forced to rethink this. And there was another time where archaeologists were horrible to each other. These scientists were horrible to each other because they attacked the guy who made the discovery. They said, this is nonsense. This is impossible. We know. We're very clear, which is this arrogance.
Yeah, they did that to
of these
Jacques
people.
Cinq-Mars, who discovered the bones in Alaska, northern Canada, that had cut marks on them that were older than the accepted time of when humans could be there. And now everybody accepts that as it's true. We know that they were there then.
It's so gross. It's so gross, and they keep doing it over and over and over again. So then the question is, okay, if we have 22,000-year-old footprints, how many thousands of years were they here before that? Like, have they always been here? How'd they get here? Like, what's the earliest known humans, We know that there's no Neanderthals here so far.
So far.
So
right?
far, there's no Denisovans, but you imagine they found a different kind of human. Wasn't there something that came up where they found some human that lived, God, I want to say 6,000 years ago, and his DNA is different? This is like very recent. Different than anybody that they've ever discovered before. So they're like, okay.
Well, that would be interesting.
I think this is like super recent, like yesterday or the day before. But it's just these things keep finding new stuff. Here it is, 6,000-year-old skeletons with never-before-seen DNA rewrites human history.
Huh.
Yeah, so this was just June 7th.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, they uncovered